Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Discriminating Gamer. My girlfriend, she wasn't around the other day, but I found she left a note on my PlayStation 5. It said this isn't working. But I turned it on and it worked fine. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to go ahead and take a look at Boardquest, Tales of Liria from Ramezware.
We'll get back to the review in just a moment. I want to take a minute to ask you to check out my other channel, that is Cody Carlson, PhD, where we talk about history, books on history, military history. I even post some of my lectures for my classes on there. Please check that out. Please subscribe to that channel. And now, back to the review.
Boardquest Tales of Liria is a 2 to 4 player RPG type game from Ramezware, in which there's no real good or evil factions. Rather, there's just different factions striving for their own self-interest. The factions are humans, orcs, elves, and demons. Now, first of all, the game board is modular. You go ahead and you can assemble a map. There's instructions for exactly how you're going to assemble your map depending on player count and some other factors. You're going to put that together to create the board you'll be playing on. Now, on this board, you're going to place treasure chest tokens, you're going to place some monsters, and you're also critically going to place some forts. Now, you'll each have your own kind of fort that you start at, which is in your color, but then you'll have various forts around the board which are face down. Now, there's different monster hexes on the board. You're going to go ahead and roll for those to determine if the monsters that spawn there are going to be common monsters or more dangerous, uncommon monsters. You'll also have a board you put next to it to kind of track your income and your experience. The player board itself will actually show what the stats for your hero are based on your current level of experience. You'll also take aside 3 character boards. Now, these boards will come into play as you play the game, and they will unlock various other characters with various other abilities into your faction. Now, every round will be similar. The players will all take a turn, and then the monsters will take a turn. Now, at the beginning of your turn, what you're going to do is essentially calculate your income. Essentially, your base income is 5. You lose 1 for every character you have brought on the board, but then you gain 1 for every fort that you control. Now, you have a deck of skill cards. Now, you have just kind of your basic core skill cards, and you will be able to upgrade them as the game goes on. But you're going to draw 3 of these cards, and you'll always draw your hand up to 3. That is your hand limit. Now, players are going to go ahead and take actions on their turn. Now, they've got kind of general actions. They can essentially take as many of these actions as long as they can pay the costs for them. You can do things like recruit a new character. You can actually recruit one of the new characters provided you have got the gold to pay for it. You can also upgrade a character by paying, again, the appropriate gold to essentially move them to the next experience level, which increases all of their stats. You can sell an item. If you have an item that you have acquired during the course of the game, you can sell it for whatever the cost is minus 3. You can also purchase item cards that have been previously discarded into a common discard pile. Now, your heroes have mana. Of course, this is their magical abilities. And your skill cards, you can actually cast one of these spells from your skill cards if you have the appropriate mana to do so. The hero will also have the option to discard a skill card in the hopes of drawing up more powerful skill cards on their next draw phase. Now, your characters, that is to say your hero or the characters you recruit in the game, they can do things like use active skills that are printed on their boards. They can go ahead, they can move, or they can attack on their turn. Now, during an attack, all things being equal, you're going to compare kind of your attack ability to an enemy's defense ability. You're going to roll a couple of die, and then if you can exceed the defense ability, you go ahead and you score hit and you deal damage according to what your damage points are for your skill level. However, even if your natural ability exceeds the enemy's defense, your attack ability exceeds the enemy's defense, you still have to roll 2 die, because if you ever roll Snake Eyes, it is a critical failure and good things don't happen. Now, of course, some of the heroes and characters have special abilities. They have ranged abilities. They have other things that will give them advantages or maybe disadvantages over the course of battle or over the course of the game. And battle can also result in various status effects, different things that may kind of hinder your character or, again, give you an advantage over an enemy for the next turn. Now, the terrain plays an effect for movement as well. It can mitigate some of your movement. It can, of course, deduct from the movement point allowance that you have on your character boards. Now, if you ever move onto a neutral fort and your character doesn't do anything else for that entire round, at the end of that next round, you can go ahead and flip that fort over to your color. If it's an enemy fort, you have to flip it to neutral, and then you can flip it to yours, so that's going to take you a few turns in order to do that. Critically, if you are on a fort you control, you get a +2 defense advantage. If you are on a fort an enemy controls, you get a negative defense modifier. Terrain, too, can also factor into combat. You can get certain modifiers depending on the terrain you're on as well. Now, if ever you defeat an enemy, particularly monsters, it's going to tell you how many experience points you get and how much loot you get, essentially how many cards you can draw from the item pile. Again, there's going to be common items and uncommon items that will be more or less powerful. So players are going around and around. They are drawing cards. They are casting spells. They are moving their units. They are attacking monsters. They are attacking each other. They are trying to claim those forts and essentially trying to gain an advantage over their enemies. Now, if ever one player gains 5 of the forts on the board, controls 5 of the forts on the board, they win the game. And if ever one side is able to defeat the other side's hero, then they win the game. So whoever can meet those particular conditions wins. Boardquest, Tales of Liria. Boardquest, Tales of Liria is an RPG. It's rooted in kind of those role-playing ideas of questing, of going after your enemies, of your stats you're using, rolling the die to enhance your attack and battle stats, but also effectively using terrain, going after those forts, but also going after those loot items, which can be so important to you when meeting your objectives. This is a high fantasy game of battle, of maneuver, of using cards effectively to gain advantages over your enemies, to cast spells, to make you more powerful, your enemies less so. It's also a game of battling epic monsters. You're going to be attacking these monsters. The game itself runs the monsters as it attacks the various players, adding a little more spice and sugar to just what would be a head-on brawl. So there's another dimension of the game here with the monsters. Now, the artwork and components here are not complete. The premium edition of the game will actually have minis, and this is one of the best produced prototypes I have ever explored here on The Discriminating Gamer for one of these preview videos. Overall, it's a good looking package that delivers some surprises and some fun in this RPG fantasy high adventure game. So if this looks like a game you might be interested in, you're going to want to go ahead and check out the Kickstarter page, which will be up shortly. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us once again on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, we ask you to please leave a comment for us here on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on our Facebook page, or on thediscriminatinggamer.com. We'd ask you to please like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter. I'd also ask you, ladies and gentlemen, to please check out my other channel, that is Cody Carlson, PhD, where we talk about military history, books on history, fun things like that. I even post some of my lectures on that channel. It would mean a lot to me if you would check out that channel and subscribe. And, of course, please leave a thumb to this video on Board Game Geek. And if you are a fan of the channel, I'd ask you to go ahead and click on the Super Thanks button here on the YouTube page and leave a tip. Speaking of fantasy, ladies and gentlemen, I gotta tell you, I just wish Medusa would stop going around objectifying everyone. Please somebody help me on my feet again, and I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where I've been. Please somebody help me on the solid ground. It's a long time, and I'll be dying. Once a year I wind up in the band.
It's the armor that keeps me from getting pierced by arrows.
That's the arrows of metaphorical arrows or real arrows?
I'm going to say both.